Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's Steve and William again. And today we want to talk about the topic of anger. Anger is an emotion that I think everyone has felt before. Some people feel it very intermittently, some over a long time, and then they get blood pressure problems and all kinds of physical ailments because of it.
Anger turns to stress, doesn't it?
Right.
I guess it is a stress in a way.
But today we wanted to better understand the causes, the roots of anger, how it ties in with anxiety, what personal experiences we've made, what theories we've learned from other people. And I want to just start off by asking you, Steve, what makes you angry, or what has made you angry in the recent past?
Oh, I love this question. This question always fascinates me because up until I was about 22, 23, I can honestly say I'd never experienced anger.
Oh,
I'd experienced being upset, I'd experienced being frustrated or annoyed, but actual anger where you want to flip tables and punch walls and like scream at the universe, like without it being like crying and stuff. So like again, my emotional spectrum was very much if something upset me, I just cry and I'm sad in that respect. I wouldn't want to push against it. It would just
mhm.
be okay that way. So then my health stuff kicked in. So again, I think we talked about it before, obviously, chronic fatigue syndrome, ME. I've had anxiety struggles myself, depression most of my from my teenage years onwards, and yeah, when they all kind of like hit to a head when I was about 21, 22, when I started having to limit what I was doing. So I could be, invert commas, a normal person, job, work life, etc. Uh, doing social things, not really having to pay attention to what I'm doing. Have to get enough sleep, but not having to pay attention. Then I started having to micromanage my time because I was starting to get sick and ill from doing things. And after about a year or two, it got to the point where it was becoming too much. So I started to get really angry, just like what the hell was going on? Like why this is so unfair. This is ridiculous. Like I
Mhm.
can't do things I used to be able to do. Like I can't help people the way I wanted to help people. Who am I? Again, lol, the name of the podcast. But like who am I without my um job, my um hobbies that I had at the time, like sports and stuff. And yeah, that finally filled me with rage, and I didn't know what to do with it. Like I had no idea how to control it, and it did come out in sort of like I think fears again. Go to um Star Wars, and Yoda's old quote: "Fear, anger, hatred, dark side," and it's like the anger strangely went back a stage and turned to fear. Like it was like I started to get afraid of everything. Because I didn't know what to do. I was lost. This anger, that just energy. 'Cause to me, it's all energy now. Like I see it as energy,
Mhm.
and it controlled me. And I tried to find a way to stop it from controlling me. And it just it turned into when the chemicals got released, and emotions I experienced became fears and anxieties, and get down panic attacks. Um, Again, being more sick. So yeah, that's these angers were because of health stuff when I couldn't have the freedom that I wanted because of my health.
Mhm.
That was to answer the question
Okay.
specifically, but that's I guess the long version of that.
Okay, limitation and frustration because of that.
Yep.
But it's really interesting how you say in the first phase of your life that was never the case.
Yeah.
Could we categorize it using fight versus flight, fight or flight response to threats? That in the beginning you were more passive, and you would take the pain inside of yourself to
Yeah.
maybe punish yourself, and then later on you would act out and kind of fight back. But there wasn't any one person you could fight, right?
Yeah. Well,
Sometimes we direct our anger towards someone, but this
yeah.
doesn't sound like that.
I probably was. There probably was some sort of level of angers and stuff. but I did a lot of sport, and so I was probably challenging that energy into going for runs, doing weights, playing football. Like those frustrations and angers were probably channeled, like without me realizing, in those forms. Um, and I listened, and strangely, I listened to a lot of angry music. Like I love heavy metal, rock music, and so I listened to a lot of fast-paced, angry music, and it helped, I guess, diffuse any of those things. Like a lot of people talk about, maybe I'm just a bit strange, but a lot of people talk about those things, um, like hyping up those emotions. Whereas for me, it calms them down, I think.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
again, it helps
to
channel
me,
them.
to me, intense music is just something that goes along with my mood.
Yeah,
When I already feel that way, I want something. Yeah, you call it calming, or just I call it maybe just confirming or validating that
yes,
yes, I'm allowed to feel this way.
yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Okay.
How about yourself? Turn the question around, I guess.
Um, in principle, similar. Uh, I did get angry sometimes as a child. Never hands-on, never physical,
Yeah,
just verbally, and that's how it's been most of my life, where I try to make other people feel bad through my words, if I perceive them as triggering or causing my anger.
yeah,
And since I've been working that in the last years, that's been much less the case, where I'm also more aware of what I'm saying and more empathetic. That if you actually love the
yeah,
other person, then being or causing them harm or wanting to cause them harm becomes a lot harder. You still do
yeah,
it. You often hurt the people you love the most, I guess, because you spend the most time with them. I'm not sure why that is. I keep hearing that, right? You
yes,
you hurt those that you love the most. Well, they're the ones who are always around. So you, of course, they get the brunt of your anger. But also, if I'm angry at the government, I can't just go and hurt some person or group of persons because
yeah,
that's not the government. Those are people. The government is more of an idea
yeah,
that people have in their heads, and I do as well to an extent, and they keep that alive, like it's some well, it is an imaginative idea or an ideal that people strive to uphold, and they will sometimes sacrifice themselves and or others to uphold it, even though it's just imagined.
yes. The only part
Okay.
that it can really be affected is the grassroots. Like again, if we want to really like again, we can vote, we can cast our votes and stuff, but at the end of the day, if we want to get involved with that entity as a government, we either ignore it and just do our own thing, or we, get involved in local council, local government, and help our own area. Because that's what people seem to not realize is that they spend a lot of time screaming and shouting at the government, but you can go to meetings, you can become a councillor, you can become like involved in local government, local policy making.
Mhm.
Um, if you yeah, again, if you want to get involved. But anyway, side point.
Okay. Um, let's talk again about the Star Wars example. If I remember correctly, um, Anakin had a vision of his wife dying, and he wanted to prevent that. And that is, and since no one in the Jedi Council wanted to teach him the ways of avoiding death, he was open to being taught by Palpatine
Yep.
on how to do that. And so that's something that lured him over to the dark side. And then he got addicted on power over people. He totally lost sight. Like, so this is mainly episode 3, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's all episode 3
He,
stuff.
he
Yeah.
totally lost sight of the whole reason for switching to the dark side. Well, also people told him that in his anger he killed his wife, and then he became even more angry.
Yeah.
And then he took it out on everyone, but he didn't realize that he was being a puppet for the
Yes.
Imperator. What do you call him in English?
Emperor.
Emperor. Okay.
Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah. So that's a really good example. I hadn't considered that. Um, But let's get back to personal examples.
Well, it just shows how anger can cloud things. It just
Yeah.
shows you how that um I guess fictional story can teach us how it's so easy for us to become lost in anger. Like it's one of those interesting things like having experienced it, as I said, when I was like early 20s and having lots of like then having to come to terms with what it is, how I deal with that anger and stuff. Again, and seeing it only as an energy now and not actually as a negative or positive, because we talk about this all the time, and I talk about this all the time, where um my personal belief is that all these energies can be harnessed. Like you can be angry about something and use that energy, process that energy to achieve your goals, to get happiness, like to become happy. Um, but I think it's one that a lot of humans can't control or can't process very well. And I'm not sure why.
Hmm.
Why it's such a because I think it's because we fear it. Because we fear it. I think it's because we fear anger and it's told that it's a negative and that we shouldn't show it. We shouldn't
Hmm.
deal with it. That it ends up destroying people. Like it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we actually took time to feel that anger emotion, to come to terms with it, to understand it, um, to look at it as a part of us, because it is. It's part of it's part of being human. And these, I guess, experiences we go through, um, we can choose to run away from it or accept it, or look where it comes from. That's what we're talking about today, is where does the
Hmm.
anger come from? Why do we experience it? Um, I guess yeah, that's probably more of a route to go down at the moment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But it's really good that you mentioned what are we taught to do when we get angry?
Yes.
To put it aside, to calm down, settle down, be polite, uh, think
Yeah.
of others, and which basically means suppress your feelings.
Yeah,
And
it means that don't look after yourself and make sure everyone else is okay. That's yeah.
of course, I do think that it is a good strategy to do something in the short term to
Yes.
um, calm the symptoms. For
Which they say
example,
say count to 10, don't they?
yeah, breathe, remove yourself from the person that's triggering you that minute. Especially if it's your partner,
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you can live with them and be with them every day. You don't want things to fester, but it is absolutely common, and I would say even more so for men than for women, because women at least deal with their feelings earlier in life than men. Men hopefully catch up later,
Yeah.
at least in my observation. What was I saying? Oh, so men are typically known for exploding
Yeah.
when they have bottled up too much of
Yeah.
whatever is causing the anger, when they have not dealt with it, when they've not worked through it, or maybe talked about it to someone, and then
Yeah.
suddenly it gets too much.
A lot of men tend to be very angry in their 40s and 50s. Like because it's all suppressed and bubbles up and then it starts appearing in that later years from what I've seen, again, observation.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I would also say that, yeah, the older you get, the weaker you get in um, in abusing yourself mentally, to put it bluntly,
yeah.
um, because all our life we are suppressing things,
Yeah.
and today we're talking about the the triggers, the causes for anger, and so the weaker you get mentally, the harder it gets to
Yeah.
suppress those. When my grandmother was at the end of her life, she was hallucinating and feeling the same things she felt during the Second World War.
Oh wow.
And
Yeah.
and maybe my hypothesis is that she was no longer able to suppress the feelings because she
Yeah.
was lacking that mental strength.
Yeah. That's a very complex one, that one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the go-to example for me because
Of course. Yeah.
she
Yeah.
was in her 80s, late
Yeah.
80s. Okay.
Yeah. And it's pain. Like a lot of, I guess, anger and emotion, I guess destructive emotions can be seen as, actually that's the wrong phrase. Anyway, emotions that cause us sometimes naturally to behave destructively. Um they stem from pain. And as we get older, I'm not sure if it's that we get like less able to cope. If anything, it's just that we're tired of that
mhm.
same emotion repeating itself. Like, which I guess could be seen as, yeah, not being able to handle it the same way. But like in any, I guess we could go to trauma, I guess. In any traumatic experience, um, everyone has a threshold, a breaking point, I guess. Like we all have a point where it becomes too much. The stress, the trauma, the anger, the emotion, whatever terms you want to use, become too much. And if we've lived with it for all our lives or for a long period of our lives, finally our bodies, our psyches want to release. They
Mhm.
just want it. They just like subconsciously, it's just like you need to get rid of this. You need to deal with this.
Mhm. It
And it,
sounds a lot like what addicts go through when they hit rock bottom.
yeah,
And when dealing with a problem, no, when the addiction causes more pain than dealing with the addiction,
yeah,
then you start thinking, okay, okay, let's go through this, let's work it out.
yeah. Let's try and yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
And there is an addictive factor to this anger
yes.
topic. Okay, to help us understand more about the roots and causes of anger, let's talk about what we learned in this interview that we both watched before the show between Tim Ferriss and the psychologist Gabor Mate. I will link it in the notes below. Um, Gabor is trying to explain that whenever you react to a situation with anger or frustration, he says frustration is just a weaker form of anger, and rage is then a stronger form of anger. Whenever you do that, you're actually reacting to something that is going on in your head, not exactly the thing that you are experiencing or watching or whatever. It's the perception of what's going on that is triggering you,
Yes.
and that is always based on a memory. So it's always in the past. And some people call this instinctive, automatic, subconscious reacting to situations, living in the past, and aware, conscious, deliberate response to a situation is living in the present.
It's all about assumptions.
Okay.
So again, it's assuming like so let's give an example that was given in that video where you've gone away on holiday, you've asked someone to fix a bunch of things around the house, you come back and that person hasn't done it. They were describing that the first response was to be angry and disappointed and annoyed and frustrated. And you're assuming that the person's done it because that hasn't done it because they're lazy or don't respect you or didn't prioritize you because you're not important to them. And all those things are your perspective, as you said. That's your perspective on the situation. Like you define how, again, I talk about this all the time to people, and it often annoys them because I do love how I've managed to feel free by realizing that perspective is everything. Like how
And
you
other people don't believe that
they
they
haven't
have
got,
that
yeah,
freedom.
they haven't got there yet. And it's it was a good example. It was a good example, like with this situation, because yeah, you come home and yeah, you're going to be angry straight away, but your anger and your frustration, it says more about you as an individual than it does about the person who hasn't done what you asked them to. Like it reflects more on you because that person can turn around and be like, well, actually, someone passed away that I really cared for and I haven't had a chance to do this, or I've been really sick, or I was actually really anxious, or I lost the key, I'm really sorry, like to the house. Like there's a whole bunch of other things that could play into this that, and eventually anger might be the right response. Like, for example, eventually the person might be like, oh, I just couldn't be bothered. And you'll be like, well, actually, you know what? That's really disappointing. I am angry at you. I won't give you this opportunity again, and then move on. you know what, it is justified to be angry in that situation. Ultimately, again, we talked about it at the start, where having anger is okay. It's important for us to know that it's okay to have that.
Mhm.
But our initial response, like you said, is usually set in the past. It's usually because we assume that we have been disrespected or not looked after or not cared for. We're sad because that person didn't do what we wanted them to do, or we asked them to do, which is tough because if if you ask someone to do something, you have trust in them, you have hope in them, you have some sort of connection, and that connection has been what's the right word? Let
Abused?
down,
Yeah.
abused, yeah. But again, we have a choice ultimately how we respond. We don't have to go round there and the anger we feel, tell them off, basically. We don't have to tell them off.
Right.
It's
Anger can give you the fuel you need to do something. Anger can protect you in the situation. Like if you're being attacked, then being angry at that person and maybe fighting back is the absolute right thing to do to protect yourself. But I would like to be more in control of what I do.
yes, of course, yes.
I would like to do things deliberately and out of choice rather than reacting, rather than my animalistic side taking over and suppressing my aware side. But it's always because there is some pain lingering, and that pain usually comes from childhood when you were not mature enough to understand how to deal with some difficult situation in a healthy way. And that's not putting anyone down because
Well, of course not.
one, you're a
That's
child, and two,
exactly.
even if you're an adult going through some traumatic situation, you don't know how to deal with it at first.
No,
So
no.
that's totally normal and natural. And then it gets suppressed, and a lot of people don't even know
Yeah.
what they went through, or even if they do know something about it, say you were sexually abused as a child, um, then that doesn't mean that you understand how to deal with that even 20 years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. That's a tough one.
I've heard so
I
many
mean,
theories
yeah.
about this topic that you might think I know exactly how to deal with it in my own life, but I need to discover it for myself. And only
Yes.
then it makes sense in a way that I
Yes.
can work with it.
That's the important thing is like signposting is so important to different ways to deal with things, so as many as possible, so that we as individuals can then learn what is best for us, what different ways might work for us. Um, I'm always interested in, I guess, the different like we talk about suppression of anger, but often some people they'll get more and more angry at even little things. So it starts off with one thing, starts off with like something big that they get angry about, and then something else will happen that's not as I guess extreme, but they'll still get the same level of anger for it. And before you know it, they're getting angry about every little thing, and they're
Mhm.
just constantly just angry, angry, angry all the time because it's become the pattern of behavior and the response that feels most natural to them. So there's two extremes there where when it comes to anger, where it can be just suppressed and like, oh, I shouldn't feel anger, carry on as if nothing happened. Or again, I've seen it in people. Yeah, like it just becomes a pattern of behavior to be angry. That's a natural response for everything,
Okay.
not just extreme things.
So it's like you become addicted to it.
Almost,
Um,
yeah. Like your body just or your mind just thinks, well, this is the easiest response, so let's just do it.
yeah, let's go deeper into that.
It's
When you get
empowering.
addicted,
Yeah.
what? Oh, okay, yes. Um, when you get addicted to a substance, you get a lot of endorphins. You
Yep.
have this positive high, and then you think, oh, well, that was easy. um, I want to go back there. I don't want to go through all these problems in real life. I want to escape. Or maybe you do try to live a normal life, and then whenever some small hiccup comes your way, you think, oh, I don't want to deal with this. I want to go back to this imaginary world where everything's good, and then sooner or later it catches up with you. But um, I want to ask, what is the good thing about becoming angry? Why do we want to keep going back to it? Isn't it something painful?
I guess it all depends on specific situation,
Hmm.
but the immediate pain can be completely drowned in the anger. So the
Hmm.
anger is what consumes all. And so let's say you're frustrated at people not doing what you want. Let's say you're trying to do a thing and someone's not doing what you want to do. And so you get angry and then they do it because they're afraid of you. Like deep down, whether they show it or not, they just do it because it's easier than dealing with the level of anger. You, without realizing, have got what you want. Well, you have created a situation where you've got what you want, and your body will, and or psychology or psyche will then be like, yes, wonderful, excellent, we got the outcome we wanted. We got the outcome we wanted.
Empowering, like you said, right?
Yeah, empowering. And so
Hmm.
you just keep doing it because you don't you like it. It's the easiest route to get what we want, and often as human beings, we pain often comes from not getting what we want.
Okay. So a desire for
So
control.
expectation, desire,
You,
yeah,
you have an expectation of what should happen,
yeah,
and then you work at it. That's normal. But then when it doesn't happen, how do you handle that? And you're saying a lot of people, when things don't go their way, they feel a lack of control, or
yep,
they feel that someone else is controlling them
yeah.
because
It's
it's,
it's an injustice. It's wrong,
yeah.
and I think that's the root of what needs to change. Is our
Hmm.
perspective at that very core root of it. Again, we in a previous episode, the should. It should be this way. It should
Yeah.
be the way that I want, or it should be another way, or it should be this way. If we are more flexible and open in that core belief, because it's a belief ultimately, it's perspective, but it's a belief. It's I believe that I should, well, lol, I believe no matter what happens, I will be happy in this response, or I will be calm in this response, or I will um, take time to think and feel about my response to a situation. Um, yeah, taking back to that root.
Okay. So you want to make space for that whatever happens, you will be fine with it.
Yeah,
Um, where does the
and
need for
again,
control come from?
um, good question.
So this is
Um,
something that I've been discovering in myself, in my subconscious.
well, it's fear. It's always fear.
It has to do with fear.
It's always fear.
It's in the example with Tim Ferriss, when Gabor asked him, so what is the thing in your past that you're trying to prevent, or that you are afraid of being repeated? And he said, let's pause,
Let's move on.
because
Let's
yeah.
talk about that another time.
And then,
Yeah,
but that interview is maybe 2 years old, and in recently, Tim has been more open about this, and he said that he was sexually abused
yeah,
in his childhood. In other interviews, he's a very open podcaster.
yeah.
Um, but like I said earlier, even knowing that doesn't just suddenly solve everything.
Well,
Your
of course not.
subconscious needs to work through a lot of things. It's to
Yeah.
process things that were not processed earlier.
Well, this is it. We talk about these again ways to do things or um options we have to try and gain happiness and a better understanding of who we are. But these things take time. This isn't just a sort of like, oh, one day I wake up and my perspective completely changed, and I was like, I no longer was affected by my anger, and that can happen to some people sometimes, like very rare. But
Mm.
for most people, it's a process of getting therapy. It's a process of having someone you can talk to work through these things with. Um, it's a long process, but it's a painful process because again, you have to confront
Mhm.
these past traumas. Um, yeah, and then once we do confront those past traumas, it takes time, and it may be a whole lifetime of just little by little finding ways to not have again fear responses because the opposite, I guess, well, like a counter to fear and anger is hope and love. Like, so having hope in ourselves that we can respond in a way that is healthier for us, that we can hope to be happier and not experience the sadness that comes from anger and fear and those destructive powers. And learn to, I guess, love ourselves again. I talked about it before, where instead of like a lot of people will then go, "Oh, I'm so angry all the time. I hate myself for my anger. I
Hmm.
hate that I'm this way." And actually, that just perpetuates a lot of traumatic responses, a lot of problems. So in time, again with therapy, with medication, because some of these things are again chemistry. Like if you have a is it the pituitary gland that is mostly the anger response?
I'm not sure.
I can never remember the biology. Um, there is whatever it is, and if your one is more active or releasing more chemicals than someone else's, you're going to experience that anger more than someone else. And that's a process of, again, going to doctors, working through things, um, finding your own specific strategies.
I also believe that you cannot hate someone else without hating yourself.
Interesting.
Um, I was once on a bus tour, and the bus driver was really just raging about every little thing that happened in traffic. And
Oh, yeah,
I was sitting towards the front. I heard a lot of her verbalizing this anger,
yeah,
sometimes cursing, that's common as well. Um, and I just got the distinct feeling that she's punishing herself. And that stayed with me. And I have recognized that in myself as well. When something doesn't go my way, I punish myself. And so I've been exploring, what does that mean? And why is that my response? Why is that my way of trying to comfort myself and get rid of the pain that comes up automatically? And this is the best explanation I've found so far. The the inner child wants to do just whatever, just have fun. And then
yeah,
the manager or the conscience, the controller, uh, believes that the child doesn't know what it's doing and needs to keep it in check.
yeah,
And the manager isn't entirely rational himself. So the manager is the one who is afraid of that childhood trauma repeating itself, which is usually irrational. And in order to maintain a feeling of control over my life, he hurts the child because in some situations that's the only thing he can control. Just,
yeah,
okay, I'm going to hurt the child, it's going to hurt him, it's going to subdue him and make him stop whatever it's doing and feeling and wanting. And then I can finally feel like I'm in control again, like things are going my way, because in the outside world things just don't seem to work that way. And
yeah,
then I finally have a comfort that things are going my way. And it justifies this violence, this abuse, by saying,
yeah,
well, I know I'm hurting you. I know, and I love you, but this is for your good, because what's going on out there is worse. So I'm preventing
yeah,
something that's worse than what you're going through if I do this. And that's wrong.
yeah. We tend to mirror what we were taught. So our behavior patterns obviously tend to mirror how we were as a child, teenager, how we were educated, I guess, in how to deal with these things. And negative reinforcement is the easiest option for that. For easiest option for immediate, um, I guess,
Behavior modification.
effect. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So straight away, if you know, again, every child's different, but if you give a child a smack on the bum, whatever, when it's done something that you perceive to be bad or naughty or whatever, then that fear in the child will then um, mean it doesn't do it again. But you're then training that child to then, whenever they feel they've done something wrong, to like probably relive emotionally that experience and then it just becomes like that's how they will emotionally traumatize themselves over years and years and years anytime they do something they perceive to be wrong. And what's interesting, and this is just a little side note, is that again now smacking and stuff is obviously not, at least in this country, is I think it's banned now and it's illegal, I think. But going way back, it was normal. Like going
Mhm.
way back, it was you'd get caned, you'd get like beaten if you were stepped out of line. Um, my mum I only had to do it a couple of times on my brothers, and it worked. It did what it's supposed to do in the fact that they stopped doing what was naughty or wrong, or to protect them. Because again, sometimes it's for protection. It's like it's an
Mhm.
easiest thing to, you know, give them that a smack to help them reinforce that something is dangerous. Like if you run in front of a car, grab that child, bring it back, and give them a smack, and say like on the bomb, whatever, be like, no, that was dangerous, and then they associate that danger with that consequence, which obviously, in my opinion, is ultimately wrong because there's other ways to do that. There's other ways to positive reinforcement, positives, but that's just the way it was done and has been done in many countries and many parenting styles. But what's funny is that when my mum tried it with me, um, I hit back. So, because that's like she would smack me on the bum, whatever, and yeah, I'd go to hit her because like that was like I associated, oh, mum can smack me, I can smack her, kind of thing. And then she was just like she was shocked. Like she said to me, she's like completely shocked that, oh, this is what I'm teaching my child,
Mhm.
and then never did it again, kind of thing. Um, and it's interesting how those, I guess, parental education has again a massive impact on our ability to experience emotions, to deal with emotions later in life, how we treat ourselves. Like, yeah, how we treat ourselves is often, not always, but often massively impacted by how our parents treat us.
I watch my nieces often. They're 2 and 4 right now. And the 2-year-old has a habit of getting into a fit sometimes. And
Yeah,
the smallest thing can trigger her. Which,
yeah,
well, it's always a case of not getting what she wants, but no
yeah,
matter how small that is, that doesn't make any difference. Once she made up her mind, that is what's going to happen. And when it doesn't, usually because, well, either because of circumstances or because one of us says no,
yeah,
um, then she might just cry and cry, and it can go on for a half an hour.
yeah,
And when I saw that, I thought, huh, that's very similar to what adults do when they keep their anger going for days
yeah,
or I don't know how long. And it's interesting when she starts to calm down, when she starts to sobbing rather than crying loud, that feeling of comforting herself is also diminishes, and then she starts to try to get up that rage again, go, and then,
yeah,
find just her brain starts to rattle and just find any reason it can to get upset about
yeah,
anything, because that will keep you, like you said earlier, distracted and like I believe comforted,
yeah.
because it gives you control over your inner household when the outer world doesn't comply anymore.
Yeah. And all respect to parents, a lot of parents, because the complexity of raising a child is next level. Like in these situations, like the child may have special needs that we don't you don't underlying special needs, may have like autism, may have I guess mental health stuff that you just don't know about, and it's learning to how that specific child is going to deals with these things. Because in the past, we didn't know about these things. Like in the past, we didn't know again really like the levels of complexity of child behavior and child learning. Um, and like my youngest niece, like we like my youngest niece often um would yeah, throw tantrums and throw fits and puke up the level of when told no about something. And we just thought it was them being them. And then as you get a few years later, 5, 6, 7 years old, we start to like realized, and the school highlighted that, yeah, they are on the spectrum. They've got ADHD and autism. And it was like, so therefore it's much more difficult for them to process and understand no. Like, and that this is like that sometimes you have to adapt what you want to others and these kind of concepts. And so yeah, you have to be so specific and so careful these days with children. Well, you should have, society should have always been careful and more understanding and more aware and compassionate towards child behavior. But again, it was just easier. These taking things and making them negative, like just, smacking a child or whatever, because it's just easier. And now we're living in my opinion, a wonderful society in that respect, that we're exploring more and more the healthier ways to raise children.
But if you are an adult and you realize that someone in your
Yes.
childhood abused you, willingly or not, I think it's not productive to blame them and to want an apology from them, because often they will not remember, or they just didn't do it deliberately. So
Yeah, we
I
don't know.
think in the 12-step program there is something about coming to terms with people that have hurt you in the past, but it's not always necessary, because like you said in the beginning, how you react says more about you than about the person that you're reacting to. And ultimately we need to accept responsibility for what we're going through, not that we're going through it, but
Yeah.
for keep going, and just not just retreat or fight or blame other people, but find productive ways. Like you always say, flood yourself with love, because in that
Yes.
environment you are a lot more likely to find a solution to your predicament.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it takes time, but learning to love yourself and care for yourself and be gentle on yourself um has a massive impact on processing trauma um and those angers and frustrations. Because again, it's they're justified. A lot of these angers and frustrations are justified. Again, we're not belittling the fact that feeling frustrated at government or parents or circumstances or past abusers or all these things, like we should feel rage at these situations. But again, it's what we do with it. It's what we do with it. It's like how we channel it. Um, my personal way is channeling it to I guess keep achieving my goals. Like almost like maybe it's an unhealthy way of doing it. I don't know. It's just my way of doing it, is sticking it to the man, as it were. Like just do things knowing that I am creating community, creating kindness, creating love. And that stems from a hatred of um I guess the status quo and systems. Um but then it comes from, yeah, it's a weird one. It's multi-layered. Again, the core ultimately is love. The core is
Yeah,
like love and care for
but
people
it makes sense to
and
me.
myself.
I also would like to be totally free from any negative feelings about
Of
anyone.
course, yeah.
But no, I have a similar agenda in my plans to educate people online about cryptocurrency, because I don't believe that the current economy and political systems can be improved from the inside. I believe we need to build our own economy
Yes.
with our own currencies, and not rely on any centralized authority to provide that. So in this last segment, can we talk about how to deal with people who are
Mm.
currently dealing with anger? So we want to keep them in our lives. We don't, distancing ourselves from them is hopefully the last resort,
Yes.
not what we do by default
Yeah,
with
sometimes it
people.
is needed, but yes, the initial stages.
So when someone
Yeah.
is being angry, then and we know that they're hurting themselves more than anyone else. I think that gives me some comfort to not blame that person when he hurts me out of anger, and then I can be more compassionate with them, more understanding, maybe compare it to my own anger in the past, and be more in a rational space. Have you ever
Yeah,
experienced that someone becomes angry with you because of something that you did was not okay for them, and then they are irrational because in an angry state you cannot think uh, in a very productive, constructive way,
yeah,
and so they start blaming you. They want you to feel bad about yourself. They want you to admit that you have been a bad person, that you've made a
yeah.
mistake, and I guess they it's purely for finding comfort.
Yeah,
to
shared pain almost. They're in pain because they're angry, and therefore they want you to be in pain.
and then
Um,
and then it hurts them when they see you just sitting there being calm, just waiting for you to
yeah,
finish your rage.
yeah. It's experience I had a number of years back. Someone I was dating at the time, and we were in like having a sort of an argument as such, or well, we were kind of like they got annoyed at me about something and started shouting at me, and I was like, well, actually, they got angry at me for not getting angry about something. I think it was. I
Mm.
literally think it was like they were like, "Why aren't you getting frustrated or angry about this? Like, this is really like so upset, like so frustrating." And I was like, "Well, it's just not how I do things." And they were just like, "Well, it's the way I do things. This is the way that like this is the way my family does things. This is how we get it out there." And I was like, "Well, we don't need to. We can talk about this calmly and um share the frustrations and the anger and the sadness." And they did calm down. They were like, "Okay, let's try that kind of thing." But they were so foreign to them. It was so foreign as a
Mm.
concept to um not just shout at each other when those instincts kick in.
Yeah, or
Um,
when someone debates with me, I used to engage
yeah,
in debate, but it never worked out for me. It was never productive. It never led to
yeah.
us agreeing on something and getting to that state where, yes, he admitted that I'm right.
Yes, exactly. This is it, isn't it? So
Now I feel empowered because
yeah,
he agreed with me.
this insecurities. Yeah, we long for that though, don't we? It's
Yeah.
part of our nature. But yeah, I guess like I often just like tell people I love them almost straight away. If someone's getting angry at me, depending on who it is, if it's someone I care about, if it's someone I care about, obviously, or ask what's actually wrong. Because often their anger, again, isn't about that situation. So often, if someone's upset, like crying about something, let's say they're driving along in a car and someone cuts them up and they'll start shouting and get angry and crying. Actually, if that's not what they're crying about or angry about, it's something else that's affected them that day or the day before or something or a week before that's led them to have that outburst. And so, yeah, either depending on this person's situation, I tell them, yeah, look, I love you. Why are you so angry? Or please, can you calm down? This isn't like, uh, and I've told someone that I'm scared of them. I'm like, look, you're scaring me a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
I love that response. Yeah,
yeah,
emotional response, rather than trying to be rational and explaining to them what they're going through. That doesn't help.
have a, it doesn't help Um, often, yeah, if you respond with, yeah, an emotion as well, they suddenly go, oh, because often they don't realize that they're being that way. Often they
Mhm.
don't realize how intimidating they actually can be. People don't realize when they are angry, often how scary they can be. And when you tell them, "You're scaring me," um, often that can almost do a 180. Sometimes it doesn't, but something like, it can do a 180 because if it's someone that cares about you, they will just be like, "Oh, crap."
And then
Um,
later in a moment of calmness and agreeableness,
of
you
course,
can
talk
maybe
about
bring
it,
up,
work through it.
so earlier today you seem to be really raging, and from my perspective you got out of control and you really hurt that person with what you said. And did you see it that way as well? Did you understand what was going on?
And
That
again, how
that's
can I
that's
help
what I
you?
tried to do later.
Yeah, again, how can I help you? Because again, like the person clearly does need help. Like there's a love and support network needed there to help them if they want it. Again, like we talked about midway through this discussion, is like the perspective, helping change perspective, helping change um, internal assumptions. Again, if you see someone angry, you assume they're a bad person, so you can be angry back. That's the general society's response. And actually, again, it's usually way more than that. So it's looking below the surface, as I call it. Reading between the lines, all these different idioms, whatever they're called.
That's
how to
crazy
describe
what
it.
you just brought up about when someone looks angry, they're a bad person. That's what my nieces are learning um from Disney books and movies, you know?
Yeah.
When they're reading a book, for example, this lady has a mean expression, that means she's the baddie. And when someone
Yes.
is really happy, it means they're the goodie.
Which is
And
so wrong because often
yeah,
the baddies are the ones that know how to put a smile on their faces and or can be and and imitate niceness. Again, it's like it's yeah. And it's usually the scared and the insecure and the ones needing of love. And some of the Disney films and some other things do cover those kind of concepts. But generally again across society it's usually yes, bad person, angry and grr and mean and then lovey-dovey happy people are good people. And actually again it's not like that at all. There's a lot more going on. And so I think that's kind of probably the message of this is like, yeah, we'll for ourselves we'll experience anger and we need to figure out what's actually going on, why we're angry ultimately, childhood stuff, other things. And obviously when other people are angry, look beyond why they're angry, if depending on obviously the specific situation, if it's loved ones, not loved ones, and help each other. We can all help each other to again know ourselves better. Um and
right.
find happiness and love. Because that's ultimately, in my opinion, peak human existence. Peace, serenity, love, happiness.
But every person needs to do the work for themselves. There's some things
Yes.
that no one else can do for you.
Yes, taking the wheel, not being the victim. Yep.
And in my case, all this knowledge that I've been sharing, well,
Yeah.
that I've been collecting over the years, and some of it I shared today, I try to then turn into a pattern that I can hopefully recognize more instantly when it happens in real time, and I can say, oh wait, I've been here before. So, breaking through that irrationality and taking control of the process. And then I can ask myself, okay, is it the manager hurting the child? So
Yeah.
is the child afraid of the manager right now? Or is
Yeah.
the manager afraid of outside things going out of control and ending up again with what happened in my childhood? That terrible thing that I don't even remember. Which fear is kicking in right now? And what do I need to do to calm myself, to soothe myself? Do I need to comfort the manager and re-parent him and help him to realize that whatever he's fearing is not likely to happen again? Or do
Yeah.
I need to tell the child to just wait for the manager to calm down, and then we can go back to being fun and playful?
Yes. And repetition, practice, and eventually those responses in time, again, with kindness, gentleness, practice on us with ourselves, will become automatic. They'll become the automatic
Right.
response. And that's, I guess, probably a lot of our goals. To take the theory, adding it into practice, and over time, being able to, I guess, be more constructive than destructive.